Welcome to News Express. A fresh storm is unfolding around Nigeria's long-running security crisis. But this time, the accusations are coming from outside the country. At a United States Senate hearing, Ted Cruz made a striking and controversial claim, alleging that Nigerian government officials are involved in facilitating attacks against Christians. It is a serious accusation, one that goes beyond criticism of policy failure and entered the territory of direct complicity. And as expected, it has opened a new front in an already complex and sensitive debate. Speaking during a Senate's Foreign Relations Subcommittee section on counterterrorism in Africa, Ted painted a troubling picture of Nigeria's security situation. He claimed that the country records the highest number of Christians killed for their faith globally, citing figures that suggest over 50,000 deaths since 2009 and the destruction of more than 20,000 churches and religious institutions. But it was not just the number that drew attention. It was his assertion that Nigerian officials have, unfortunately, been complicit in enabling these atrocities. That single statement changes the conversation. It shifts the narrative from a government struggling to control insecurity to one potentially entangled in it. And that is where the controversy begins. So far, Nigeria's federal government has not issued an official response to Ted's claims. That silence is notable. In situations involving international allegations of this scale, governments often move quickly to defend their position, clarify facts, and reject accusations outright. The absence of an immediate reaction leaves space for speculation, interpretation, and political spin, both within Nigeria and abroad. However, a counter-narrative has already emerged from a familiar voice, Lai Mohammed, speaking in the United Kingdom, strongly rejected the idea of a targeted genocide against Christians. His argument was clear and direct. According to him, insurgent groups like Boko Haram have killed more Muslims than Christians, and framing the crisis purely as religious persecution is misleading. This contradiction highlights the core of the debate. Is Nigeria facing a religious war or broader security crisis that affects multiple groups? But Ted's position leans heavily towards the former. He linked the violence to religious identity and even pointed to the operation of Sharia law in parts of northern Nigeria as part of the context. He also criticized what he described as a slow and ineffective response by Nigerian authorities, suggesting that previous assurances from security officials have not translated into meaningful results. On the other hand, Lai Mohammed's response challenges that framing. He argues that the situation is far more complex, rooted in criminality, insurgency, and socio-economic factors rather than a deliberate campaign against any single religious group. He even suggested that the narrative of Christian genocide gains more international attention, implying that perception may not fully align with reality. Between those two positions lies a difficult truth. Nigeria's security crisis is multifaceted. It includes terrorism, banditry, communal clashes, and criminal violence. While religion can play a role in some conflicts, it is not always the defining factor. Reducing the entire crisis to a single narrative, whether religious persecution or purely criminal activity, risks oversimplifying a deeply complex problem. Yet, Ted's intervention cannot be misled easily. As a U.S. Senator, his words carry diplomatic weight. his introduction of the Nigerian Religious Freedom Accountability Act of 2025 signals that this is not just rhetoric, but a policy direction that could shape how the United States engages with Nigeria. If such legislation gains traction, it could lead to increased scrutiny, potential sanctions, or shifts in bilateral relations. This raises another important question. What evidence supports the claim of official complicity? Third did not present detailed evidence during the hearing, at least not publicly. His statement appears to be based on broader reports, intelligence assessments, and possibly advocacy group data. But in international politics, allegations of this nature demand strong proof. Without it, the risks being seen as politically motivated or incomplete. At the same time, dismissing the claims outright without investigation also carries risks. Nigeria's security challenges have persisted for years, with repeated criticisms about response time, accountability, and effectiveness. Even if there is no direct complexity, questions about governance, coordination, and protection of citizens are not guaranteed. The response from the United States Department during the hearing adds another layer to the conversation. Neck Checker acknowledged that Nigeria has taken some positive steps. These include leadership changes within security agencies, recruitment of international troops, and the deployment of foreign guards to troubled regions. He also pointed to increased prosecution of suspected terrorists and ongoing cooperation between both countries. But even this measured response came with caution. According to Checker, while progress has been made, more can be done. That phrase is diplomatic, but it also signals that concerns remain. This creates a mixed picture. On one side, there are allegations of complexity and failure. On the other, there are acknowledgements of effort and cooperation. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, but the gap between perception and reality is where political narratives thrives. Lai Mohammed's comments further complicates the issue by challenging not just the facts, but the framing itself. He argued that early victims of Boko Haram were largely Muslims, particularly those who embraced Western education. According to him, the group later shifted tactics to target Christians because it generated more international attention. It is a controversial claim, but one that reflects a different interpretation of the same violence. He also rejected the idea that banditry in Nigeria is driven by religion. Instead, he described it as a criminal enterprise where both perpetrators and victims often share the same ethnic and religious background. This perspective shifts the focus from identity to economics and survival, suggesting that insecurity is driven more by opportunity than ideology. So where does this leave Nigeria? Caught between international scrutiny and internal defense. The country faces a narrative battle as much as a security one. On the global stage, accusations like those from TED can shape perception, influence policy, and affect diplomatic relations. At home, counter-narratives aim to protect national image, maintain unity, and avoid deepening religious divisions. But beyond narratives, there is a more urgent reality. People are dying, communities are being displaced, and regardless of whether victims are Christians or Muslim, the fundamental issue is the state's ability to protect its citizens. This is where both sides of the debate must converge. Whether one believes Ted's claim or Lai Mohammed's rebuttal, the need for effective security, accountability, and transparency remains undeniable. The danger lies in allowing the conversation to become purely political. When security issues are framed only through the lens of international accusation or national defense, the focus can shift away from practical solutions. What matters most is not who wins the argument, but whether the violence decreases. As the debate continues, one thing is clear. Nigeria's security crisis is no longer just a domestic issue. It is a part of a global conversation, shaped by international actors, political interests, and competing narratives. And in that conversation, every claim matters, every response counts, and every unanswered question becomes part of the story. That's it on News Express. If you found this report insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And join the conversation. Drop your thoughts in the comments section. I am Tony. Many thanks for watching. Don't forget to stay informed and stay engaged. Do have a lovely day. Bye for now.